All right, let's do a little midnight, or not midnight, but late night check-in. It's not quite 11 here, so. All right, let's run 2 missions real quick, I guess.
Nations like Somalia coming over. And they had very good social programs in Minnesota. And so that was a magnet for them. And they came, and many were beautiful families. But what came with them were all of those connections that the Islamic State had, both outside our country and tied to some of those East African nations, and inside with al-Shabaab, that militant group that's on our soil. So you saw a lot of recruitment, and Minnesota had a problem with this, and they knew that they did. 2007, 2010, they knew that it was growing. They didn't cull it. They didn't. And so as it began to grow, those young, mostly men, were picked up, at least a dozen of them that we know of, maybe more. And those trials began by ISIS. It became a problem there. So if they were willing to ignore the veins of radicalization and terrorism in the state of Minnesota, why should we be surprised that they would ignore $1 billion+
You know what else they ignored, Harris? The Somali gangs. So it's not just about al-Shabaab. The Somali gangs in Minnesota that prey on their very own community that Ilhan Omar ignores. I have police officer sources there that have been telling me this for years.
They're a voting base.
You know, Kaylee, and I remember, because I was at the White House during this time, during COVID, and there were so many questions that came to me about the Paycheck Protection Program, which was there to support small businesses, to keep American citizens on payroll. And there was so much criticism of that, just to keep people working, keep American citizens getting paid. All the while, the press was totally turning a blind eye to this.
Yeah, and the reason why a thorough investigation into this scandal is so important is because it's really a perfect case study of the many failures of progressive governance. You had mass migration without any assimilation at all. You had racialized politics that pressured people not to say anything about the lack of assimilation. Then you had bureaucratic mismanagement of taxpayer funds, and then the total drive of any real accountability from the people who mismanaged those funds in the first place. You don't see any sort of apology from Tim Walz. Hey, Minnesotans, I'm sorry for wasting $1 billion by letting the Somali community do this. That is a major scandal. And, you know, it's not just Minnesota. And I will just say really quickly, to your point that this had been known for years, there's a group of state employees in Minnesota who said that they flagged this for Kamala Harris's campaign in the DNC when she tapped Tim Walz. And they said nothing about it. And there's a reason why Brooke Rollins yesterday in the cabinet meeting said that she's going after other blue states who are refusing to turn over SNAP data. It is because this is not just a Minnesota problem. This is a California problem. This is a New York problem. Our taxpayer funds are being exploited and abused, and we need to get to the bottom of it.
And you know, at the heart of each of those states, Cheryl, is I was shocked to read this in the New York Times. The episode has raised broader questions for some residents about the sustainability of Minnesota's Scandinavian-modeled system of robust safety net programs sustained by high taxes.
No.
Yeah, bingo.
You want to bankrupt the city of Minneapolis? You know, go right ahead. But look, this is the tip of the iceberg, guys, on this investigation. I have a well-placed source that told me that the fraud is everywhere. It does point back to the Somali community, to be clear here, because of the al-Shabaab connections. But we're talking about Michigan. It's happening up in Canada. The same fraud schemes are going on in Canada. To your point about the Minnesota Department of Human Service employees, yes, they warned the Harris campaign, but they also warned Tim Walz specifically, and they were gaslit. They were ignored. They've been very vocal about it. And I don't know, thank you, the New York Times, for finally catching up to what everybody else already knows. But to your point about the politics, you know, Walz is running for governor again.
That's right.
So he has every reason to get in front of the cameras right now and decry all of this.
Right.
Because he needs the money. If you don't have the Somali community, as you know, Harris, if you don't have them behind you, you don't get elected.
You can't win in the Twin Cities. You can't win the state. And look, Senator Tom Emmer, Republican running up there, yeah, he's got plenty to say right now. So Walz had better speak up. Otherwise, he won't be in that race.
Oh, to be a Democrat, you can take taxpayer money intended for children, get it to terrorist groups unwittingly, and then have an aiding and abetting press corps. Like, wow, that's how this country works.
Hey everyone, I'm Emily Campagno. Catch me and my co-hosts Harris Faulkner and Kaylee McEnany on Outnumbered.
Well, President Trump speaking to Venezuelan President.
Do you think the Democrats need to make?
So with us right now is someone who...
Joining us now is Texas Congressman Pat.
So how much of this could have been prevented by the Biden?
So newly appointed CBS editor-in-chief Barry Weiss sending a memo to her 60-Minute staff members for, quote, not advancing the ball on a related story here, amid her decision to hold a segment on El Salvador's CCOT maximum security prison, where the Trump administration has deported hundreds of Venezuelan migrants. She wrote this memo to the staff saying, quote, if we're going to run another story about a topic that has been much covered, we need to advance it. At present, we do not present the administration's argument for why it sent 252 Venezuelans to CCOT. Let's bring in Fox and Friends Weekend co-host Charlie Hurt. Charlie, great to have you with us today. You know, there's a lot of layers to this story. Let me just put up one other part of this memo from Barry Weiss. Tom Homan and Stephen Miller don't tend to be shy. I realize we've emailed the DHS spokesperson, but we need to push much harder to get these principles on record. And then Sharon Alfonsi, the producer, reporter on this story, says government silence is a statement, not a veto. Their refusal to be interviewed is a tactical maneuver designed to kill the story. So, Charlie, what do you make about all this?
Well, I mean, the big picture is, I guess, that it's kind of remarkable to think about 60 Minutes as kind of this premier TV news magazine that we have has enjoyed enormous respect over the decades. And here you have a very basic point being made by Barry Weiss to her staff that there are a couple of elements to a story that you have to have. And of course, you have the staff absolutely freaks out about it. And it's kind of remarkable to think about kind of where 60 Minutes has gone, that they would freak out over the idea that you actually need to put a story into context. You have to include all necessary and sensible sources of voices in that story. And it has to move the story forward. It can't be a political screed. And while I have not seen what it is that they put together, it sure sounds like, based on what she has, what she's saying here, and what people who apparently it leaked in Canada, and so a lot of other people have managed to see it. It certainly does seem to suggest that this is what we've seen from 60 Minutes of late, where it's really become a political screed outlet, where they just want to throw things together to try to not inform its viewers and not advance the story forward and not include all voices, which of course is the whole point of everything that we try to do in the news business.
Yeah, I mean, I remember the old 60 Minutes, which I think there's an effort being made to kind of get back to that, where you would be watching the story and you would feel like it was sort of leading you in one direction, is telling you one side, you're going along with it. Okay, well, that makes a lot of sense. I understand the outrage on that side. And then all of a sudden it would sort of flip and you would start to hear the other side. And this gives you the ability to walk away from the story, kind of deciding what you think, having heard both sides. Now, I just want to bring this up from this Wall Street Journal piece. CBS News had sought and received responses from DHS, the White House, and the State Department, according to people familiar with the matter, that the segment, which was available to some viewers in Canada, which you mentioned, and seen by the Journal, didn't include the fresh comments that those agencies provided, Charlie. Your reaction to that?
Yeah. First of all, I love your description of the old 60 Minutes, because, of course, that's exactly what I remember. It's exactly when 60 Minutes was so good. It's exactly the reason why people like you and me got into the news business in the first place, because we love telling those stories. And the thing about it is, if you do that, the reason that you do that and the reason it works is because you respect the viewer, and you respect the viewer's ability to grasp all of the information and make up their mind for themselves. Today, with the 60 Minute, and I think this is what the Wall Street Journal is kind of talking about, the 60 Minutes is only trying to talk to their little segment of the population, and that is what a political propaganda operation winds up being, and it's not journalism. It's not, you're not informing people, and most of all, you're not having the respect for readers, in my case, or viewers, in 60 Minutes' case, to actually be able to absorb all the information and make up their minds for themselves.
Yeah, but Charlie, one more question. With regard to the participation from the White House, does it become incumbent upon both sides to then say, well, they're doing this story, I think we should sit down with them and we should tell them why we did this CCOT project, why we felt it was valuable and it was going to increase the security of Americans at home?
Yeah, and it's such a great point, and I think that what that reveals is sort of there's such a breakdown of trust that the White House is like, I'm not going to deal with these people, so they just ignore them. But then on the other side, 60 Minutes part, the oldest trick in the book, if you really don't want to get a certain voice into your story for whatever reason, you just go to them, you ping the press secretary and say, hey, you want to comment on this? Oh, okay, no, you don't. And then you run with your story 5 minutes later, which is, I think, kind of what CBS is doing here. And that's the oldest trick in the book if you really don't want to get the administration's voice into the story. But I think it reveals, big picture, a tremendous breakdown. There is zero trust going either way. And I'm sorry, but CBS, 60 Minutes, is entirely responsible for maintaining that trust. Their trust with not only with viewers, but with their sources.
True. And as Barry Weiss has said, she wants to run the story, but she wants to wait for both sides to be told in it. So it's going to be really interesting to see where this goes from here. And if we do get to see that more fleshed out version and we hear from both sides in this piece. So that'll be the proof in the pudding. Charlie, thank you. Great to see you. Merry Christmas. Thanks, my friend.
Great to see you. Merry Christmas, Martha.
You as well.
I'm Steve Ducey.
I'm Brian Kilmeade.
And I'm Ainsley Earhart. And click here to subscribe to the Fox News YouTube page to catch our hottest interviews and most compelling analysis.
Congresswoman Anna Paulina Luna joins me now. So great to see you this evening, and Merry Christmas. You know, it is kind of amazing to look at Democrats, whether it's Kilmar Garcia or these Somali scammers in Minnesota. Democrats always pick the worst people to stick up for and the worst people to make their heroes.
Yeah, you're not wrong on that. You know, it'd be very surprising to see some of my Democrat colleagues actually support Americans or veterans. Meanwhile, they are literally putting illegals first. And that's largely why President Trump won in the midterms. But if I could just say for a second, Charlie, you know, after seeing everything that I've seen in the last couple of months, especially coming out of Tim Walz's just entire policy, I'm very, very glad that he's not the vice president. JD is much better than he could have ever been.
No, it's really remarkable, but it's also important to remember that, you know, he's been governor there, and so many of the people that have been caught up in this scam.
All right, that gets us pretty much where we need to be. Let's see, 2 hours. Okay, well, we may not have any more missions to run, so we'll let them run back, check on them in the morning, I guess. All right, let's get a raider attack in before we cut out. All right, now we'll check on them in the morning and see what they're doing.